The evening light filtered through the half-drawn blinds of Raj's downtown apartment. At 32, he had everything he wanted in life: a successful career in finance, a sleek apartment with a view of the city skyline, and most importantly, his freedom. Marriage and family were concepts he dismissed long ago, having watched his parents' relationship crumble throughout his childhood. Raj checked his watch. Priya would arrive any minute. They'd been meeting like this for nearly 3 months now: dinner, conversation, and sometimes more. No strings attached. That was their agreement. When his doorbell rang, he smoothed down his navy button-up shirt and opened the door. Priya stood there, her long dark hair falling over her shoulders, wearing a simple black dress that hugged her curves perfectly. "You're right on time," Raj said with a smile, stepping aside to let her in. "When am I not?" Priya replied, her lips curving into a smile as she walked past him, the faint scent of her jasmine perfume lingering in the air. Their arrangement had started at a mutual friend's wedding. Both single by choice, both focused on their careers, both uninterested in the complications of a serious relationship. They had chemistry, that was undeniable, but they also had boundaries. No expectations. No emotional attachment. No love. They shared a delicious meal Raj had ordered from their favorite restaurant. Their conversation flowed easily as it always did. Priya talked about her latest architectural project, a sustainable community center she was designing. Raj shared stories about his recent business trip to Singapore. "You know," Priya said, setting down her wine glass, "my mother called again today. 3rd time this week." Raj chuckled. "Let me guess. She's found another perfect match for you?" "A doctor this time," Priya rolled her eyes. "Apparently, he's from a very good family and is very well settled." "And what did you tell her?" "The same thing I always tell her. That I'm focused on my career right now. That I'm not ready." She paused, twirling the stem of her wine glass between her fingers. "She doesn't understand that not everyone wants the traditional path." Raj nodded in agreement. His own parents had long given up on the idea of him settling down. After years of setting him up with the daughters of family friends and distant relatives, they'd finally accepted his choice to remain single. To freedom from expectations, Raj raised his glass. "I'll drink to that," Priya clinked her glass against his. Later that night, as they lay together in Raj's bed, a comfortable silence stretched between them. These moments were part of their arrangement too, the physical connection without the emotional entanglement. It worked for them. It was simple, uncomplicated, exactly what they both wanted. "I should head home soon," Priya said, glancing at the digital clock on Raj's nightstand. "You could stay," Raj offered, then quickly added, "It's late, and it's raining." "Purely practical." Priya smiled. "Purely practical, huh? Well, when you put it that way." They fell asleep on opposite sides of the bed, a careful distance maintained between them. That was another unspoken rule of their arrangement: no cuddling, no affection that might be misconstrued as something more. 2 months later, Priya sat in her bathroom, staring at the small plastic stick in her hand, 2 pink lines clearly visible. This was the 3rd test she'd taken, each showing the same result. She was pregnant. Her heart pounded against her ribs. This wasn't supposed to happen. They'd been careful. They'd used protection. Yet here she was, facing the very complication their arrangement had been designed to avoid. Priya closed her eyes, trying to gather her thoughts. She needed to tell Raj. There was no question about that. But how would he react? Would he think she'd somehow planned this? Would this be the end of whatever it was they had? She picked up her phone, her finger hovering over Raj's name in her contact list. No, this wasn't a conversation to have over the phone. She needed to see his face, to make sure he understood that this was as unexpected for her as it would be for him. The following evening, Raj opened his door to find Priya looking pale and tense. "Are you okay?" he asked, immediately concerned. This wasn't the usual Priya who arrived at his door with a confident smile and a witty remark ready on her lips. "Can I come in?" "We need to talk," she said, her voice steady despite the anxiety churning inside her. Raj felt a flicker of unease. In his experience, "we need to talk" never preceded good news. He led her to the living room, watching as she perched on the edge of his couch, declining his offer of wine. "What's going on, Priya?" he asked, sitting across from her. She took a deep breath. "There's no easy way to say this, so I'm just going to say it. I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air between them. Raj stared at her, his mind struggling to process what she'd just said. "You're pregnant," he finally managed. "Yes. I took 3 tests. All positive. But we were careful. We always used." "I know," Priya interrupted. "But nothing's 100% effective." "It happened, Raj." Raj ran a hand through his hair, his mind racing. A baby. A child. His child. Their child. This wasn't part of the plan. This wasn't what either of them wanted. What are you thinking of doing?" he asked carefully. Priya looked down at her hands. "I've been thinking about it non-stop since I found out. And I want to keep it." Raj felt like the air had been knocked out of him. "Keep it?" "Priya, we had an agreement. No complications. No strings. This is the very definition of both." "I know what our agreement was," she said, her voice gaining strength. "But this is different. This is a life. My life has always been carefully planned, meticulously organized. But this wasn't planned, and yet it feels right somehow." "Feels right?" Raj stood up, pacing the room. "How can this possibly feel right? We're not in a relationship. We don't love each other. That was the whole point." As soon as the words left his mouth, he regretted them. Priya flinched as if he'd struck her. "I'm not asking you for anything," she said quietly. "I'm not trying to trap you or change our arrangement. I just thought you deserved to know." Raj stopped pacing and looked at her. Despite her calm exterior, he could see the vulnerability in her eyes, the fear. He sat back down, taking a moment to collect his thoughts. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't mean to react that way. This is just a lot to take in. I understand. It was for me too." They sat in silence for a while, the weight of the situation pressing down on them. Finally, Raj spoke. "What happens now?" "I don't know," Priya admitted. "I haven't thought that far ahead. I just knew I needed to tell you first." Raj nodded. "I appreciate that. And for what it's worth, I want to be involved. I don't know what that looks like exactly, but I'm not going to leave you to handle this alone." Relief washed over Priya's face. "Thank you. That means more than you know." As she left his apartment that night, both of them knew that everything had changed. Their carefully constructed arrangement had been built on the foundation of no attachments, no complications. Now, they were facing the biggest complication of all. In the weeks that followed, Raj found himself thinking about Priya constantly. Not just about the pregnancy, but about her. The way she laughed. The passion in her voice when she talked about her work. The determined set of her jaw when she made up her mind about something. He'd been so adamant about keeping emotions out of their arrangement that he hadn't noticed them creeping in anyway. Now, faced with the prospect of becoming a father, he was forced to reevaluate everything he thought he wanted. One evening, he found himself outside Priya's apartment building. He hadn't planned to come here. He'd been out walking, trying to clear his head, and somehow his feet had carried him to her door. He hesitated before ringing her doorbell. They hadn't seen each other since the night she'd told him about the pregnancy. They'd texted occasionally, mostly him checking in on how she was feeling, but they'd kept their distance, both needing time to process this unexpected turn of events. Priya opened the door, surprise evident on her face. "Raj. I wasn't expecting you." "I wasn't expecting to be here," he admitted. "Can I come in?" She stepped aside, letting him into her apartment. It was warm and inviting, much like Priya herself. Art and plants filled the space, giving it a lived-in feel that Raj's minimalist apartment lacked. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," Raj said, turning to face her. "About us. About the baby." Priya tensed slightly. And I want to try. Not just to be involved with the baby, but to be involved with you. Properly." Priya looked at him skeptically. "What does that mean, exactly?" "It means I want to see where this could go. Between us. No more arrangements, no more rules about not getting attached. I think I'm already attached, Priya. I think I have been for a while, but I was too stubborn to admit it." Priya's expression softened, but she still looked uncertain. "Raj, I don't want you to feel obligated because of the baby. That's not fair to either of us." "It's not obligation," he insisted. "The baby just made me realize what I was already feeling. What I was trying so hard not to feel because I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Of ending up like my parents. Of loving someone and having it all fall apart. Of being hurt. Of hurting you." Priya stepped closer to him. "I can't promise we won't hurt each other, Raj. But I can promise that I'll try my best not to. And that whatever happens, we'll face it together." Raj reached out, tentatively taking her hand in his. It was a small gesture, but it felt significant. "A beginning. That's all I'm asking for," he said. "A chance to try. Together." As Priya squeezed his hand, a small smile playing on her lips, Raj felt something he hadn't expected: hope. Hope for a future he'd never planned on, but that now seemed full of possibilities. Their agreement had been no love, but perhaps sometimes, life had other plans. The morning sickness hit Priya hard in her 12th week of pregnancy. She knelt on the cold bathroom floor, her body trembling after another round of nausea. This had become a daily routine: wake up, rush to the bathroom, and spend the next 20 minutes feeling miserable. Just as she was rinsing her mouth, her phone buzzed with a text from Raj: "Outside your door with ginger tea and crackers. Can I come in?" A small smile touched her lips despite her discomfort. In the past month, Raj had surprised her with his attentiveness. True to his word, he was trying. "Doors unlocked," she texted back. Moments later, Raj appeared in the bathroom doorway, concern etched on his face. "Bad morning?" Priya nodded weakly. "The doctor said it should ease up soon." "Here," he said, handing her the warm cup of tea. "My mother swears by this blend for nausea." Priya took a careful sip. "You told your mother?" Raj sat on the edge of the bathtub. "Not yet. I just remembered her mentioning it once when my cousin was pregnant." He paused. "But I've been thinking we should start telling people soon. We're almost at the 3-month mark." The idea of announcing the pregnancy made everything feel more real. Up until now, it had existed in a bubble between just the two of them. Once their families knew, there would be questions, expectations, judgments. "I'm seeing my parents this weekend," Priya said. "I was thinking of telling them then. Would you like me to come with you?" Raj offered. Priya looked at him in surprise. Meeting her parents would be crossing yet another line in their evolving relationship. "Are you sure you're ready for that? My mother has been planning my wedding since I was born. She'll have us married by dessert." Raj laughed. "I think I can handle it." Besides, we're in this together, right? Together. The word still felt foreign in the context of their relationship. For so long, they had been careful to maintain their separateness. Now, everything was changing. Right, Priya agreed. Together. The drive to Priya's childhood home in the suburbs was filled with a nervous tension. Raj kept tapping his fingers on the steering wheel, while Priya repeatedly checked her appearance in the visor mirror. "You look beautiful," Raj said, noticing her anxiety. "I'm not worried about how I look," Priya sighed. "I'm worried about their reaction. They're traditional, Raj. This isn't how things were supposed to happen in their perfect world." "Life rarely follows the perfect plan," Raj replied. "Besides, they'll have a grandchild soon. That tends to smooth over a lot of objections." As they pulled into the driveway of a modest two-story house with a well-maintained garden, Priya took a deep breath. "Here we go." Her parents were waiting at the door. Her mother, Deepa, immediately enveloped Priya in a warm hug before turning curious eyes to Raj. Her father, Vikram, stood tall with a slightly stern expression that softened when Priya hugged him. "Mom, Dad, this is Raj," Priya introduced. "Raj, these are my parents, Deepa and Vikram." "It's nice to meet you both," Raj said, extending his hand first to Vikram, who gave him a firm handshake. "So, you're the reason our daughter has been too busy to visit her parents," Deepa said with a knowing smile. "Mom," Priya warned, but Raj just laughed. "Guilty as charged," he said smoothly. "Though in my defense, Priya is quite dedicated to her work as well." Vikram nodded approvingly. "Come inside. Lunch is ready." Throughout the meal, Priya marveled at how easily Raj charmed her parents. He asked thoughtful questions about their lives, complimented her mother's cooking with genuine enthusiasm, and engaged her father in a discussion about cricket that had the older man animated and smiling. By the time they moved to the living room with cups of chai, Priya felt a curious warmth spreading through her chest as she watched Raj with her family. This wasn't just him being polite, he was making a real effort, showing a side of himself she hadn't fully seen before. "Actually, we have something to tell you both," Priya said, setting down her cup. She glanced at Raj, who nodded encouragingly and moved to sit beside her on the sofa. Deepa's eyes widened with anticipation. "Are you getting married?" "Not exactly," Priya began cautiously. "But we're going to have a baby." The silence that followed seemed to stretch for an eternity. Vikram's expression hardened, while Deepa looked between them in confusion. "You're pregnant?" her mother finally asked. "But you're not married? Not even engaged?" "We didn't plan this," Priya explained. "But we're committed to raising this child together." "Together how?" Vikram demanded, looking directly at Raj. "What are your intentions with my daughter?" Raj met his gaze steadily. "Sir, I care deeply for Priya. This pregnancy wasn't planned, but I can assure you I'm fully committed to her and our child. We're taking things day by day, figuring out what works best for us." "Day by day?" Vikram's voice rose slightly. "A child needs stability, not parents who are figuring things out." "Dad, please," Priya interjected. "We're adults. We're handling this our way." "Your way?" Her father stood up. "Your way is bringing a child into this world without the security of marriage? Without a proper family structure?" "Vikram," Deepa placed a calming hand on her husband's arm. "Let's not." "No," he pulled away. "I need some air." As he left the room, Priya felt tears stinging her eyes. This was exactly what she had feared. "I'll talk to him," Deepa said softly. "He just needs time." "This is unexpected." After her mother followed her father outside, Priya turned to Raj. "I'm sorry. I knew they'd react this way." Raj took her hand, a gesture that had become more frequent between them. "Don't apologize. They're concerned parents. I'd be worried if they weren't a little upset. You're being very understanding for someone who never wanted a traditional family setup in the first place, Priya observed. Raj was quiet for a moment. I'm surprising myself, he admitted. All those things I thought I didn't want. I'm not so sure anymore. Before Priya could respond, her parents returned. Vikram still looked troubled, but his anger had subsided. We need to know what your plans are, he said, his tone more measured. Practically speaking. Priya and Raj exchanged a glance. They hadn't discussed many of the practical aspects yet. For now, we're maintaining separate homes, Raj explained. But I'll be involved every step of the way. We have doctor's appointments scheduled, we're reading up on parenthood, and we're both financially secure. And later? Deepa asked. When the baby comes? We'll figure it out, Priya said firmly. We might not be following the traditional path, but we're committed to making this work. The rest of the visit was tense but civil. As they were leaving, Deepa hugged Priya tightly and whispered, "Give your father time. He'll come around." In the car, Priya let out a long breath. Well, that could have gone worse. Your mom seems supportive, Raj offered. She is. She's always been more adaptable than my father. Priya turned to look at him. Thank you for being there. Where else would I be? Telling Raj's parents proved to be a different challenge altogether. Unlike Priya's parents who lived nearby, Raj's were settled in another city, which had made it easier for him to maintain distance over the years. We could just call them, Raj suggested as they sat in his living room a week later. Priya gave him a disapproving look. We're not telling your parents they're going to be grandparents over the phone. They might not even care that much, Raj said with a shrug. We're not exactly close. Even more reason to do this properly, Priya insisted. This baby is connecting all of us now, like it or not. Raj sighed but agreed. They arranged for his parents to visit the following weekend. Unlike the warmth of Priya's family home, the atmosphere in Raj's apartment when his parents arrived was decidedly cool. His father, Arav, a stern businessman with graying temples, offered Priya a polite but distant greeting. His mother, Nisha, was more welcoming, though Priya noticed the careful way she watched her son's interactions with her. So, this is the famous Priya, Nisha said as they sat for dinner. Raj has mentioned you a few times. Has he? Priya asked, surprised. She hadn't realized Raj discussed her with his family at all. Not enough details, his mother clarified. Just that he was seeing someone. We've been friends for a while, Raj said, catching Priya's eye across the table. Arav made a dismissive sound. Friends. Is that what they call it these days? Dad, Raj warned. It's fine, his father waved a hand. You're both adults. Though I'm curious why we're suddenly invited to meet this friend. The tension in the room was palpable. Priya could see Raj struggling, his jaw tight, his fingers gripping his fork too firmly. We have news, Priya said, deciding to take the lead. I'm pregnant. We're having a baby. Nisha's hand flew to her mouth in surprise, while Arav's expression remained unchanged. I see, he said flatly. And now you're what? Getting married? We haven't decided that yet, Raj replied. But we're committed to raising the child together. Together but not married, his father clarified. How modern. Not everyone needs a piece of paper to prove their commitment, Raj shot back. The comment hung in the air like a grenade. Priya knew enough about Raj's parents' troubled marriage to understand it was a direct hit. Perhaps we should have dessert, Nisha suggested, her voice strained. The rest of the evening continued in awkward conversation. As they were leaving, Nisha hugged Priya and whispered, "He's different with you. Happier. I haven't seen that in a long time." The comment stayed with Priya as she and Raj cleaned up after his parents left. Your mother thinks you're happier, she mentioned casually. Raj looked up from the dishes he was rinsing. Does she? Are you? Happier, I mean. He considered the question, something Priya had come to appreciate about him. He never rushed to answer important questions. I think I am, he finally said. Despite all the complications and uncertainty, yes, I'm happier. Because of the baby? She pressed. Raj dried his hands and walked over to her, his gaze direct. Because of you, Priya. The baby is part of it, but it's mostly you. The admission hung between them, another boundary crossed. Priya felt her heart race as Raj reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face, his touch lingering longer than necessary. We agreed on no love, she reminded him softly. We agreed on a lot of things, he replied. Things change. As his lips met hers in a kiss that felt different from all their previous ones, tender, meaningful, full of unspoken emotions, Priya knew they were entering uncharted territory. The agreement that had once defined their relationship was fading, replaced by something neither of them had expected to find. It's a girl, the technician announced, smiling as she moved the ultrasound wand across Priya's rounded belly. Priya felt tears spring to her eyes as she looked at the monitor. 22 weeks along, and their baby was now clearly visible, tiny hands, feet, and a strong heartbeat pulsing through the speakers. Beside her, Raj squeezed her hand, his own eyes suspiciously bright. A daughter, he whispered, his voice filled with wonder. The past few months had transformed their relationship in ways neither had anticipated. What began as reluctant co-parents had evolved into something deeper, something neither of them had names for yet. They still maintained separate apartments, still held back parts of themselves out of habit, but the walls between them were crumbling day by day. Would you like some printouts to take home? The technician asked. Yes, please, they answered in unison, then laughed. Later, as they walked through the park near the clinic, Priya noticed Raj was unusually quiet. What's on your mind? She asked, nudging his shoulder gently. Raj stopped walking, turning to face her. I've been thinking about our living situation. Priya felt her heart skip. They hadn't discussed moving in together, though she'd been wondering about it herself as her due date approached. What about it? She asked carefully. It doesn't make sense for us to be going back and forth between apartments once the baby arrives, Raj said. I was thinking, maybe we should find a place together. Something that would be ours, not mine or yours. The implication of his words, building a home together, wasn't lost on Priya. This wasn't just about convenience. Are you sure? She asked. That's a big step. I'm sure, Raj said without hesitation. I want to be there for every moment, the middle of the night feedings, the first smile, everything. I don't want to be a part-time father who visits on weekends. You'd never be that, Priya assured him. Still, he insisted, I want us to be a family. A real one. Family. The word hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning. 6 months ago, both of them had been adamantly against the idea of building a traditional family. Now, here they were, shopping for cribs and discussing living arrangements. Okay, Priya agreed, surprised by how right it felt. Let's find a place together. The apartment they found was perfect, a 3-bedroom with large windows, a spacious kitchen, and a small nursery that caught the morning light. Moving in together was both exciting and terrifying, a tangible acknowledgement that their relationship had fundamentally changed. On their first night in the new place, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes and takeout containers, Priya watched Raj assembling the crib, his brow furrowed in concentration. I never thought I'd see you putting together baby furniture, she remarked, running a hand over her swollen belly. Raj looked up with a smile. I never thought I'd be doing it. But here we are. Here we are, she echoed. Still figuring things out. He set down the screwdriver and moved to sit beside her on the couch. I think we're doing pretty well, all things considered. Are we? Priya asked, suddenly serious. Raj, what are we doing exactly? We've never really defined what this is between us. It was a question they'd been dancing around for months. Their original agreement had been shattered by circumstance, but they'd never explicitly discussed what had taken its place. Raj took her hand, a gesture that had become second nature. I care about you, Priya. More than I've ever cared about anyone. I think you know that. Caring isn't the same as loving, she pointed out. No, it's not, he agreed. Love is bigger. Scarier. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I've spent my whole adult life avoiding love because I was afraid of ending up like my parents. But being with you these past months has made me realize something. What's that? My parents' failure wasn't because they loved each other. It was because they stopped trying. They gave up when things got hard. He squeezed her hand. I don't want to give up, Priya. Not on you, not on our daughter, not on us. Priya felt her breath catch. Are you saying? I'm saying I love you, Raj said simply. I don't know exactly when it happened, but it did. And it terrifies me, but not as much as the thought of not having you in my life. Tears welled in Priya's eyes. Their agreement had been so clear, no love, no commitment beyond co-parenting. Yet here they were, 6 months later, having broken every rule they'd set. I love you too, she admitted, the words both frightening and liberating. I think I have for a while now. Raj pulled her close, mindful of her belly, and kissed her, not with the passion of their early days, but with something deeper, more meaningful. A promise. As they broke apart, Priya felt their daughter kick, as if approving of this new development. She knows, Priya laughed, placing Raj's hand on the spot. Smart girl, Raj said as he felt another kick. Takes after her mother. They spent the rest of the evening unpacking, now with a newfound lightness between them. The invisible barriers that had kept them emotionally distant even as they grew physically closer were finally down. Later that night, as they lay in bed in their new home, Priya considered the journey that had brought them here. From a casual arrangement to reluctant co-parents to, whatever they were becoming now. Partners. Lovers. A family. What are you thinking about? Raj asked, his voice soft in the darkness. How sometimes the best things in life are the ones you never planned for, she replied. Raj's arm tightened around her. I couldn't agree more. I think we should get married. The words tumbled out of Raj's mouth one Sunday morning as they sat on their balcony, enjoying a rare moment of peace before the baby's arrival. Priya was now 34 weeks pregnant, her due date approaching with alarming speed. She nearly choked on her tea. What? Raj looked as surprised by his suggestion as she was. I've been thinking about it. Our daughter will be here soon, and I want us to be a proper family. Priya set down her cup carefully. We don't need a marriage certificate to be a family, Raj. I know, he said quickly. But I want to give her, and you, everything. Security, stability, my name, all of it. Priya studied his face, seeing the sincerity there but also something else, anxiety, perhaps, or uncertainty. Is this about your parents? Raj sighed. Since their initial announcement, his father had been distant, occasionally making pointed remarks about doing the right thing. His mother, while warmer, had also hinted several times about wanting to see her son settled properly. Maybe partly, he admitted. But it's more than that. I love you, Priya. I want to spend my life with you. Why not make it official? Because marriage shouldn't be something we rush into just because a baby is coming, Priya said gently. If we get married, I want it to be because it's right for us, not because of outside pressure or traditional expectations. Raj nodded slowly. You're right. I'm sorry. I just got caught up in trying to do everything perfectly. Priya took his hand. We don't need perfect. We just need us, figuring things out together, like we've been doing all along. Later that week, Priya's parents came to see their new apartment. While her father had gradually warmed to the idea of the baby, he still maintained a certain formality with Raj that suggested lingering disapproval of their unconventional situation. The nursery looks lovely, Deepa said, admiring the pale yellow walls and the crib with its hanging mobile of stars and moons. Thank you, Priya smiled. Raj painted it himself. Her father nodded, the closest thing to approval he'd shown. You've done well with the place. As her mother helped prepare dinner, she whispered to Priya, your father was asking if Raj had proposed yet. Mom, Priya sighed. We're not there yet. But you're living together, having a child. On our terms, Priya said firmly. We're not following anyone's timeline but our own. At dinner, the conversation flowed more easily than their previous encounters, until Vikram cleared his throat during dessert. So, Raj, he began, what are your long-term plans with my daughter? A tense silence fell over the table. Raj glanced at Priya before answering. I plan to love and support her and our daughter, he said simply. The rest we'll figure out as we go. That's rather vague, Vikram pressed. In my day, a man took responsibility, Dad, Priya interrupted. Raj is taking responsibility. He's here every day, he's involved in every decision, he's committed to us. That matters more than any formal arrangement. I just want security for you and my grandchild, her father insisted. And we have it, Priya assured him. It might not look like what you expected, but it's real. After her parents left, Raj found Priya sitting quietly in the nursery, her hand resting on her belly. I'm sorry about my father, she said as he sat beside her. Don't be. He loves you. He wants what's best for you. And what do you want? She asked. Raj considered the question. I want us to be happy. However that looks. The next morning, Priya woke to find Raj's side of the bed empty. She found him in the kitchen, surrounded by pancakes, fresh fruit, and a small velvet box sitting prominently in the center of the table. Her heart skipped. Raj? He turned, his expression a mixture of nervousness and determination. Before you say anything, this isn't because of your father, or my parents, or anyone else. Priya approached the table cautiously. What is it, then? It's because I realized something last night, Raj said, taking her hands. All my life, I've been running from commitment because I was afraid of ending up trapped and unhappy. But with you, I'm not afraid anymore. With you, I'm running toward something, not away from it. He picked up the box and opened it, revealing a delicate ring with a single diamond. I'm not asking because it's expected or traditional. I'm asking because I want to build a life with you, officially, permanently, joyfully. Tears filled Priya's eyes as he continued. I love you, Priya. Not because of our daughter, though she's part of it. I love you because you've shown me what real partnership looks like. Because you challenge me and support me. Because you've made me believe in possibilities I never thought I wanted. He knelt awkwardly beside her chair, taking her hand. Will you marry me? Not today or tomorrow, but whenever it feels right for us. On our timeline, no one else's. Priya looked at the man before her, so different from the Raj who had insisted on no strings, no complications, no love. The journey from their carefully constructed arrangement to this moment had been unexpected in every way. Yes, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. On our timeline. As Raj slipped the ring onto her finger, their daughter kicked vigorously, as if adding her approval to the moment. I think someone's excited, Priya laughed through her tears. She's not the only one, Raj said, his eyes shining as he leaned in to kiss his future wife. Later, as they lay in bed, Priya's head resting on Raj's chest, she marveled at life's unexpected turns. If someone had told me a year ago that we'd be here, engaged, expecting a baby, planning a future together, I would have thought they were crazy. Sometimes the best things in life are the ones you never see coming, Raj replied, his hand gently caressing her belly. The ones that break all your rules and change all your plans. Priya smiled, feeling complete in a way she never had before. Their agreement might have been no love, but life, and their hearts, had other ideas entirely. Breathe, Priya. Just breathe. Raj's voice was steady despite the fear gripping his chest as he watched Priya battle through another contraction. 38 weeks and 4 days. Their daughter had decided it was time to make her appearance. It had started in the early hours of the morning, Priya shaking Raj awake, her face tight with pain. Now, 12 hours later, they were in the hospital, surrounded by beeping monitors and the reassuring presence of medical staff. You're doing great, the nurse encouraged. 9 centimeters. Almost there. Priya gripped Raj's hand with surprising strength. I can't do this, she gasped as the contraction subsided. Yes, you can, Raj said firmly, wiping her forehead with a cool cloth. You're the strongest person I know, Priya. Our daughter is almost here. Another hour passed in a blur of pain and anticipation before the doctor announced it was time to push. Raj held Priya's hand, murmuring words of encouragement as she labored to bring their child into the world. And then, suddenly, a cry pierced the room, tiny but fierce, announcing a new life. She's here, the doctor smiled, placing the squirming, red-faced infant on Priya's chest. Congratulations. Tears streamed down Priya's face as she cradled their daughter. Hello, little one, she whispered. We've been waiting for you. Raj stared in wonder at the tiny being they had created. 10 perfect fingers, 10 perfect toes, a dusting of dark hair on her head. Something profound shifted inside him, a love so immediate and overwhelming it took his breath away. She's beautiful, he managed, his voice choked with emotion. Just like her mother. The nurse asked gently, do you have a name for her? Raj and Priya exchanged a look. They had discussed several options but hadn't made a final decision. Anya, Priya said softly. It means, unexpected gift. Raj nodded, feeling the rightness of it. Anya, he repeated. Perfect. The first weeks at home with Anya were a challenging blur of sleepless nights, diaper changes, and the constant wonder of watching their daughter discover the world. Raj took extended leave from work, determined to be present for every moment. One night, as they tag-teamed a particularly difficult stretch of Anya's fussiness, Raj found Priya in the nursery, gently rocking their finally sleeping daughter. You should get some rest, he whispered. I can take over. Priya shook her head, her eyes never leaving Anya's peaceful face. I just want to look at her a little longer. Raj wrapped his arms around both of them, his family, a concept that once seemed so foreign now the center of his universe. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For her. For us. For changing all my plans. Priya leaned back against him. We changed each other's plans. It was true. The agreement that had once defined their relationship now seemed like a distant memory from another lifetime. The boundaries they had so carefully constructed had been replaced by something far more valuable, a connection neither had been looking for but both now cherished. When Anya was 6 weeks old, they hosted a small gathering at their apartment, a combination baby celebration and engagement party. Priya's parents, now fully besotted with their granddaughter, had softened considerably. Even Raja's father showed a different side, awkwardly but proudly holding Anya while declaring she had the Shah family nose. As Raj watched Priya move through the gathering, Anya nestled against her shoulder, he felt a contentment he'd never imagined possible. Their journey hadn't been traditional or expected, but it had led them here, to this moment of quiet joy. Later, after the guests had left and Anya was asleep in her crib, Raj found Priya on the balcony, gazing at the stars. "Penny for your thoughts," he asked, handing her a cup of tea. "I was just thinking about fate," she replied. "Do you believe in it?" Raj considered the question. "I used to think we made our own paths entirely. Now, I'm not so sure. There seems to be an element of destiny in some things." "Like us?" Priya asked, turning to face him. "Like us," he agreed. "All those rules we made, all those boundaries we set, maybe they were always meant to be broken." Priya smiled. "Our no-love agreement didn't stand a chance, did it?" "Not really," Raj laughed softly. "Though I put up a good fight." "We both did." She leaned into him, her head finding its familiar place on his shoulder. "And we both lost, beautifully." Inside, the baby monitor lit up with Anya's fussing. They moved in practiced unison, returning to the nursery where their daughter waited. As Raj watched Priya lift Anya from the crib, soothing her with gentle words, he thought about the unexpected path that had led them here. A year ago, he had been certain of what he wanted: independence, freedom from emotional entanglements, a life unbound by traditional expectations. Now, those desires seemed hollow compared to the fullness he felt with Priya and Anya. "What are you smiling about?" Priya asked, catching his expression. "Just thinking about how wonderfully wrong I was about what I wanted," he admitted. "Me too," she said softly. "Turns out the heart doesn't always follow the rules the mind sets." As Anya settled back to sleep, they lingered in the nursery, neither willing to leave just yet. The small family they had created, the one neither had been looking for, now felt like the most natural thing in the world. "I used to be afraid," Raj confessed, "that loving someone meant losing myself. But it's the opposite, isn't it? I've found parts of myself I never knew existed because of you and Anya." Priya reached for his hand. "That's what real love does. It doesn't diminish us, it expands us." In the quiet of their daughter's room, surrounded by the life they were building together, Raj knew with absolute certainty that the agreement they had broken had led them to something far more valuable than either could have imagined. Sometimes, the best paths were the ones you never planned to take. 6 months flew by in a blur of first smiles, sleepless nights, and countless tiny milestones. Anya grew from a tiny newborn to a chubby, curious baby who delighted in discovering the world around her. Raj and Priya fell into the rhythm of parenthood, learning each day what it meant to put someone else's needs before their own. Raj returned to work but arranged a flexible schedule that allowed him to be home more. Priya had extended her maternity leave, unwilling to miss a moment of Anya's early development. One evening, as Raj gave Anya her bath, an activity that now resulted in more water on him than on their giggling daughter, Priya watched from the doorway, her heart full. "What are you thinking about?" Raj asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. "Our wedding," she replied. "I think I'm ready." They had put wedding plans on hold after Anya's birth, focusing on adjusting to parenthood. The ring on Priya's finger was a promise for the future, but they hadn't set a date. "Really?" Raj's face lit up. "You're sure?" Priya nodded. "I want to marry you, Raj. Not because of Anya, not because of our parents, but because I can't imagine my life without you. I don't want to wait anymore." Later that night, after Anya was asleep, they curled up on the couch with notebooks and wedding ideas. Their vision was simple: a small ceremony with close family and friends, nothing extravagant or showy. "My mother will be disappointed," Priya laughed. "She's been planning my wedding in her head for 30 years. "We could always let her help with some details," Raj suggested diplomatically. "Within reason, of course." Priya rested her head on his shoulder. "Look at you, the peacemaker." "I'm just trying to keep everyone happy," he grinned. Though you and Anya are my priorities. Quite a change from the man who wanted no strings attached, Priya teased. Raj kissed the top of her head. Best change I ever made. 3 months later, on a perfect spring day, Priya stood in a small room at the back of a garden venue, her mother fussing with the simple white gown she had chosen. Anya, now 9 months old, sat on her grandmother's lap, dressed in a tiny outfit that matched the wedding colors, babbling happily. You look beautiful, Deepa said, her eyes shining with tears. I always knew you'd make a stunning bride. Did you? Priya asked, amused. Even when I was telling you I'd never get married? Her mother laughed. Especially then. The universe has a way of giving us exactly what we need, even when we think we don't want it. There was a soft knock at the door, and Priya's father entered, looking distinguished in his formal attire. It's time, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Are you ready? Priya took a deep breath. More ready than I've ever been for anything. As she walked down the aisle on her father's arm, Priya's eyes locked with Raj's. The man waiting for her looked nothing like the commitment-phobic bachelor she'd made her arrangement with nearly 2 years ago. His eyes were filled with certainty and love as he watched her approach. Their vows were simple but heartfelt, promises made not out of obligation but out of choice, a choice they had come to naturally, in their own time, on their own terms. I take you, not because I need you, but because I choose you, Raj said, his voice clear and steady. Every day, I choose you and our family, with all my heart. I choose you too, Priya replied, squeezing his hands. Not because it was expected or planned, but because loving you is the most natural thing I've ever done. When they were pronounced husband and wife, Anya squealed from her grandmother's arms, as if understanding the significance of the moment. Everyone laughed as Raj and Priya sealed their vows with a kiss, their daughters voiced the perfect soundtrack to their union. The reception was intimate and joyful, with even Raja's father unbending enough to offer a surprisingly heartfelt toast to the couple. To my son and his bride, he said, raising his glass. Who have taught this old man that there are many paths to happiness, and no single right way to build a family. As evening fell and they shared their first dance as husband and wife, Raj held Priya close. Happy, he murmured against her hair. Completely, she answered. Though I still can't believe we're here. If someone had told me the night we made our agreement that we'd end up married with a daughter. You would have run for the hills, Raj finished with a laugh. Probably, she admitted. And missed out on the best thing that ever happened to me. Across the room, Anya was being passed from relative to relative, basking in the attention, her dark eyes, so like her father's, observing everything with interest. She changed everything, Raj said, following Priya's gaze to their daughter. She did, Priya agreed. But I think we were already changing, even before we knew about her. She just accelerated the process. Raj considered this. Maybe. Or maybe she helped us see what was already there, underneath all our rules and boundaries. As the evening wound down, they found a quiet moment alone, away from the celebration. The stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky, reminiscent of that first night when they had established their ill-fated agreement. No love, Priya whispered, remembering their terms. That was what we said. Worst agreement ever, Raj said with a smile, pulling her close. Or best, she countered. Because breaking it led us here. For two people who had been so certain of what they didn't want, life had a way of revealing what they truly needed. Their agreement had been based on fear, fear of vulnerability, fear of pain, fear of ending up trapped or heartbroken. But love, when it came, hadn't trapped them at all. Instead, it had freed them to become more fully themselves, together. To broken agreements, Raj said, kissing his wife under the starlit sky. And unexpected blessings, Priya added, her heart full of gratitude for the path they had traveled, from casual arrangement to the deepest love either had ever known. 3 years later, Raj sat on a park bench watching Priya chase their laughing daughter across the grass. Anya, now a spirited 3-year-old with her mother's smile and her father's determined personality, squealed with delight as she evaded capture. "Daddy! Help me," she called, darting behind his legs as Priya approached with exaggerated monster steps. "Oh no, the tickle monster got you." Raj laughed, scooping Anya up and pretending to protect her before suddenly switching sides. "Or wait, maybe I'm a tickle monster too." Anya's giggles filled the air as both parents gently tickled her sides. These moments, simple, joyful, perfect, were the fabric of the life they had built together. When their daughter squirmed away to explore the nearby playground, Raj pulled Priya down to sit beside him on the bench, his arm automatically finding its way around her shoulders. "Good day?" he asked, kissing her temple. "The best," she replied, leaning into him. "Though I'm still nervous about tomorrow." Tomorrow was Priya's first day back at her architecture firm after 3 years of working freelance from home. It had been a difficult decision, but one they had made together, balancing family needs with Priya's professional aspirations. "You're going to be amazing," Raj assured her. "And Anya will be fine at preschool. She's ready for this next adventure." "But are we?" Priya sighed. "Everything's changing again." "That's what life does," Raj reminded her gently. "And we're pretty good at handling change, aren't we?" Their eyes met in understanding. From reluctant co-parents to devoted partners, they had navigated more changes than most couples face in a decade. "Remember our first date after Anya was born?" Priya asked, smiling at the memory. Raj groaned. "How could I forget?" Raj found himself marveling, as he often did, at how completely his life had transformed from what he had once envisioned for himself. "What are you thinking about?" Priya asked, noticing his thoughtful expression. "Just how lucky I am," he replied. "How lucky we all are." Later that evening, after Anya was tucked into bed with her favorite stuffed elephant and 3 bedtime stories, she had negotiated up from the usual 2, Raj found Priya on their balcony, gazing at the same stars that had witnessed the beginning of their journey. "She's finally asleep," he said, joining her and handing her a glass of wine. "Until 3 a.m. when she decides she needs water and another story," Priya smiled. They stood in comfortable silence, shoulders touching, reflecting on the day and the years that had brought them here. "Do you ever think about it?" Raj asked suddenly. "Our agreement?" "Sometimes," Priya admitted. "Usually when I'm watching you with Anya, seeing how naturally you took to being a father despite all your fears. I was so convinced I knew exactly what I wanted." Raj shook his head at his younger self. "No commitments, no complications, definitely no kids. And no love," Priya added softly. "That was the big one." "The impossible one," Raj corrected, turning to face her. "Looking back, I think I was halfway in love with you already, even when we were setting those boundaries." "Were you?" Priya raised an eyebrow. "Because I remember someone being very insistent about keeping emotions out of it." "Defense mechanism," Raj explained. "I think I sensed you were different, that you could matter in a way no one else had. It scared me." "Me too," Priya confessed. "I was just as determined to keep things simple and uncomplicated. And now look at us." Raj gestured toward the interior of their home, where evidence of their family life was everywhere. Anya's drawings on the refrigerator, toys tucked into corners, photographs documenting their journey together. "Complicated in all the best ways," Priya smiled. "I wouldn't change a thing," Raj said, pulling her close. "Not the unexpected pregnancy, not the difficult conversations with our parents, not the sleepless nights with a newborn. It all led us here. Even breaking our agreement?" Priya teased. "Especially that," Raj laughed. "Best rule I ever broke." As they stood together under the night sky, Raj reflected on the irony of it all. The agreement that was supposed to protect them from complication had instead opened the door to the richest, most fulfilling complexity he could imagine. The woman he had been so careful not to love had become the center of his world, along with the daughter they had created together. Life rarely followed the paths they set for themselves. Sometimes it took unexpected turns, broke carefully constructed rules, and led to places they never intended to go. And sometimes, if they were very lucky, those unplanned journeys led to exactly where they needed to be all along. To broken agreements, Raj said, raising his glass. And to the love we weren't looking for, Priya added, clinking her glass against his. Above them, the stars continued their silent vigil, witnesses to a love story that began with a promise of no love at all, a promise beautifully, perfectly broken.